Thank you so much, President Giammattei, for talking to us today about this really important issue. We really appreciate you showing us what's happening on the ground here in Guatemala. And we'd like to know about this issue from your perspective, because we see it in the United States. It's a crisis, what's happening. There's migrants coming from all over the world. Here in Guatemala, the story is that you're very proud of the security you have at your borders. Do you believe that the policies in the United States right now under President Biden are encouraging mass migration to the United States?
I believe that the migration is multi-causal, but we have recently seen a very serious increase in the number of migrants seeking to cross our border. When Title 42 was eliminated, we see even greater increase in the crossings through Guatemala, illegal crossings through Guatemala to reach the United States illegally as well. And now that the Venezuelans, we understand, have the possibility of obtaining a visa, that means another problem for Guatemala. We have no relationships with Venezuela. We do not have diplomatic exchanges. We don't have an embassy here or there. And so therefore we cannot issue passports or any kind of identification for Venezuelan nationals here in Guatemala. And that means a huge amount of a floating population that is going to become a serious problem for this country while we remain stopping them here.
President Biden and DHS Secretary Mayorkas say that the U.S.-Mexico border is secure and closed. Do you believe that that's the case?
You saw it. Mexico has done its part in closing the southern border with Guatemala. They have deployed 14,000 soldiers to the border between Mexico and Guatemala. And on our side, we have also deployed a soldier contingent. So we are engaged in a joint operation to close that border and prevent passage beyond Mexico further north. Now, currently, we have a problem. This recent Hurricane Julia left many communities in very dire conditions with much damage and harm. And our army devotes part of its efforts in providing humanitarian aid. They are therefore currently engaged partly in doing that, which means that we don't have all of the resources that we need to cover that other necessity that we should cover and set up the barricades that we should have. And now, on the south border with Honduras, you saw that as well, we have deployed special forces. We have deployed about 200 to 300 forces that are pushing back between 200 and 300 people who were coming our way. We are pushing them back to Honduras. Now it is as we speak. This is happening as we speak. Now the problem is that Honduras doesn't want them back, and they are letting them through without a passport. And that is not right. That is violating international laws, because I cannot give free passage to people wanting to cross my country to travel north. This time you have nationals from Haiti, Angola, Afghanistan, Syria, all of them crossing into Guatemala without proper documentation. We in Guatemala cannot do that, cannot issue visas for all of these people. So Honduras is clearly violating international agreements and diplomatic principles. And if this is not a result, we are going to have to take drastic measures.
So the migrants we've spoken to here that have been sent back to Honduras have just said they will try and try again because they know that the U.S. border is open to them. Is that your understanding as well? Is the U.S. holding up its end of the bargain in saying that their border is secure?
El tema es un poco más complicado.
It is more complex than that. Because behind all of this that you see, there's human trafficking at play. These people have to pay governments, they have to pay traffickers to get that passage to come through. And so if we allow people to go through just as has been happening, we are allowing human trafficking. And that is a very lucrative business for these traffickers. In fact, we have passed a law against the so-called coyotes, against the traffickers that carry prison sentences of 30 and up to 50 years. So that we don't have to see these people trafficked or be left behind here. If we did that, if we let them go through, we ourselves would be violating our own legal provisions, which is something that we are not going to allow. We have clarity, absolute clarity about what our role is here. And in fact, we are the only country in Central America that is preventing that safe passage for these illegal immigrants. Other countries are just giving them a pass or are just letting them, facilitating their crossing without requiring any form of identity. And that represents a serious security problem for the United States. If we let those people cross, Mexico and the United States are at risk of getting people without those IDs. So it is our obligation not to allow this to happen. And for that reason, we see that the problem is that the United States is not taking action and should be taking action and should be pressuring other countries to take some measures to prevent this. People with no ID, people with no passports who are being allowed to go through. We believe that it is necessary for the United States to exercise political pressure to prevent this from happening. Otherwise, they are becoming facilitators of traffickers, a very, very lucrative business for traffickers.
Some of these organizations that are helping these migrants along the way that we've spoken to include the United Nations, USAID, which are largely funded by the United States government. United Nations is IOM. Do you believe that those organizations are supporting this smuggling effort? Do you believe that there should be concern about them?
Well, who am I to judge? But what I see is that the IOM takes action only when an individual wants to return willingly. We have requested assistance from the United States, and in this sense, we have received very little assistance. Having all of these people in the United States costs the U.S. government millions and millions of dollars. We have suggested that they should keep the airplanes here, located here, so that we ourselves can deport them back to their countries of origin, be it Haiti or be it whatever the country may be. If they keep the airplanes here, we can send them back. Otherwise, why wait until the people reach U.S. soil to then spend millions and millions of dollars to then send them back? We have also stated that we could use the buses to return these people to their countries of origin. And they have told us that they cannot do that because their laws don't allow it. And as far as the IOM, they will take action only when a person becomes a voluntary returnee.
In June 2021, Vice President Kamala Harris made her first overseas trip, her first international trip to Guatemala, as part of her task to address the root causes of migration. How effective do you believe that she has been in that mission?
I think it's a good question for her, not for me.
Some of the migrants we spoke to about it told us that they absolutely don't believe that she's addressing the root causes in their countries and that they've come here to get to the United States. So it's something that we've heard while we've been down here.
No me extraña.
Not surprised that you heard that.
What has been the biggest differences between the policies and the movement of migrants that you've seen under President Trump versus President Biden?
Bueno, a mí me tocó el último.
I coincided with the Trump administration only 1 year, only during the last year of President Trump's administration, when I came in, and then we were hit by the pandemic, and so that truly brought down the movement of humans headed north. Quite the contrary, people started to come back to Guatemala because they were subject to less contagion if they came to Guatemala than if they stayed in the United States. Clearly, during the Trump administration, policies were far stronger. But again, I say that I coincided with the Trump administration only 1 year, so there isn't a lot that I can contribute to that question. And then we were hit by the pandemic that brought about further reduction of movement of people. Our fellow nationals who were in the U.S. Were fearful because there was more contagion in the U.S., so they came down. Then there's Title 42. That reduced even more the movement north. When the announcement was made of the probability that Title 42 might be lifted, that skyrocketed the movement of illegal migrants north. And the coyotes were quick to respond and say, oh, this is the time to do it, because you can allege persecution in your country and you'll get permits to stay there. So that was what they used. Nevertheless, Title 42 was not lifted. Title 42 is still in place, but the mere announcement of the probability of it was taken advantage of by the coyotes to promote more movements of people.